Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. Today I want to talk about test-driven development in Python using pytest. Let's start with what test-driven development is, then we'll demonstrate test-driven development with an example and we'll go from there. Test-driven development is a methodology where you take a test-first approach to developing an application. Let's say I'm a business analyst and I want to go to this website powerball.com, which is where a lottery is played, and I want to see all the previously drawn numbers since the last jackpot was won. Let's say I want to check all the numbers that were drawn between this date and this date, and I want to build my application to do some analytics on this data and possibly predict the next numbers that are going to come up. Okay, it's a use case, application use case, just to demonstrate test-driven development. And the API, so when you click on the search here, it is internally making this call, this API request, and what we want to do as a first step is to get all these numbers between these two dates by calling this URL, right? That is the use case that I want to demonstrate here. First, let's talk about the different phases that exist in a test-driven development project. The very first thing that you do when you start developing your application, you write a test and you watch it fail for the functionality that you want to develop. In this case, the very small functionality that I want to develop is to invoke this URL and get this data that you see, right? And then after you write the test and watch it fail, the next step is to implement the functionality. Then you rerun the test and watch it succeed. Then let's say you want to do an enhancement to this functionality that you developed. You do that enhancement, then you rerun the test. If it fails, you alter the test or you add a new test, and then you repeat this process until your application reaches a stage where all of the implementation features are accepted. So let's get started. For this exercise, I have installed pytest and I have installed requests. So if you have not done so already, please go ahead and install those. And let me start by creating the tests folder. I'm using PyCharm and I've created this project called test-driven development. Under that, I'm going to create a folder called tests. And under tests, I'm going to write my test Powerball client. Will be my first test module. So I want to invoke src.powerball client. From this module, I want to import get all the numbers that were drawn, right? So let's say I have a method called get drawn numbers, and that is what I want to invoke. Let me write my first test here to invoke this get drawn numbers. So I want to test get drawn numbers method here as part of this, and this should return me all the numbers that were drawn. But as a first step, I'll just assert that it is returning get drawn numbers method is returning 0 or a 1, right? Let's give this a run and see what we get. So I wrote a test. Now I'm going to run this test and watch it fail. So what it says is there is no module called src here. So this is when we go ahead and implement that functionality. Let's create a Python package, call it src. Under that, we will create a Python file, call it Powerball client, and under that we'll create a method called get drawn numbers. and will return 0, which is expected from the test. Let's give this a spin. I run it again, and now you see that this test has passed. We created the module and we created a sample method, and the test passed. Now the next thing to do incrementally is to implement the actual method. Let's go ahead and do that. I have the URL here, which returns all the numbers that were drawn between any two dates. So I'll copy that URL, call that URL. Okay. Now I'll import the request module, which I've already installed. Okay, that is done. Now the next thing is I'll invoke the get method on this URL, and as you can see here, it returns an array of dictionaries or JSON. So let's return that array back to whoever calls this method, right? So we have that implemented. So we have the functionality that we wanted to implement, but we started with the test case, we watched it fail, then we watched it succeed. Now we incrementally made a change to that method which implemented the functionality. Now let's rerun the test, and we see that it fails again. It was expecting a 0 previously, but we incrementally made a change to implement the use case specifics. Now it failed. Now I can come here and change the method. So it looks like this return value has something called a field winning numbers, right? So let's assert, instead of doing this, let's assert the string is in get drawn numbers, right? Let's see if this works. Now you see that the test case has passed. So this is a simple demonstration of how a test-driven development works in Python. I hope this was useful. Have a good day. Thank you.